Madam Chair and committee members, this is a bill that focuses on vocational technical education. Its goal is to help achieve two gaps that we've talked about a lot in this committee. We've talked about the skills gap, both in this committee and in the Jobs and Economic Development Committee. And also we've spent a good deal of time in this committee addressing the achievement gap. One of the things that I'd like to share with you are just a couple facts that some of you might recall. Last year we had a good deal of hearings on a career and technical education, and I'll just share briefly. I know our time is limited, Madam Chair, so let me just share a couple brief statistics with the committee. According to our statewide Perkins data, both nationally and within Minnesota, the most significant results show that participation in career and technical education keeps kids in school. Minnesota's career and technical education completion rate, and that's defined as students who have participated in more than 240 hours of career and technical instruction, career and technical education instruction in 1 out of 6 career fields and having graduated from high school. That rate is 94.83%. And Minnesota's Nickelby graduation rate for that same group of students who have met those 240 hours of career and technical education instruction in one career field is 95.28%. And also the Minneapolis School District has done more similar analysis, and I'm sure they could, if they're here today, they could certainly share their academic performance as well in regard to that. Another item I would share with you, according to the Minnesota Department of Education's research over the last decade, it shows that 90% or more, this gets to the achievement gap, 90% or more of African American, Asian American, Latino, Hispanic, and white students who took at least 280 hours, that would be 3 to 4 semester classes, of career technical courses graduated from high school in 4 years. So the achievement gap in high school graduation is almost eliminated amongst these youngsters. Did I say is 90% of that group that we're trying to reach graduates? So this would eliminate the achievement gap. Members, you also have in your packet, I believe it was handed out to you, a letter from the Lakes Country Service Cooperative, written by the public policy chair and the past president of the Minnesota Association for Career and Technical Education. Do the members have that letter?
We do.
Okay, we do. Thank you. And again, it's in appreciation and full support of this legislation. I'll just read a couple items to you out of that in the middle paragraph. Again, it regards the career and technical education in Minnesota secondary schools successfully articulate to post-secondary education programs and institutions and must provide a part of their curriculum and instruction career development. The success of secondary career and technical education is evident by its graduation rate for its students, 98.27% in 2011. We would welcome a graduation rate like that. As compared now to the overall statewide graduation rate of 76.9%. And that letter goes on, we believe that career and technical education is a vital component of a rigorous and relevant public education experience. It's equally valuable in developing career and college readiness for all Minnesota students, and finally developing a world-class workforce of all Minnesotans. And that's what this bill gets to. Senate File 740 develops an advisory task force to seek the best way to encourage career and technical education in our K-12 schools. I believe every one of us is aware that in our current K-12 system, we have seen that many of our voc ed departments are being trimmed back, or in some cases, they have been outright cut. And the result is a skills gap, and that's something we often talk about in the Jobs Committee. Our employers are seeing a skills gap. They're not getting students who have the skills that they need. So I'm seeking to find more ways to collaborate and for concurrent education between our high schools and our two-year technical institutions. There are models to explore, and this bill seeks to form a task force to seek the best ways of making this work in Minnesota. And the bill before you, I can walk through it briefly if you would like, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Senator, please go
All
ahead.
right. Section 1 develops a Career and Technical Education Advisory Task Force. It lists the recommendations that task force must make to the legislature. Those recommendations include things that we have talked about in this committee: alignment between secondary and post-secondary education, alignment between education programs and our workforce needs, something that we have discussed both in this committee, certainly, and in the Jobs Committee. Efficiency and cost effectiveness of our public secondary and post-secondary programs, something we all seek to do. And of course, then advisory task force must examine the role of education providers, employers, policymakers, and other interested stakeholders in realizing these improvements. It's kind of removing those silos that we have talked about so often in education. This is tying education to the workforce. And then I think that's really the gist of the bill. Section B talks about the further things to consider, which we have talked about as well, informing students about career options, occupational trends. I think sometimes that is missing. Students need to know where are the trends, where are the job trends. Educational paths leading to viable and rewarding careers. Certainly development of an education work plan for each student. We worked on that last year in the bills passed out of this committee. And monitoring students' achievement levels, prepare high school students for their career goals, and increase rates at which students complete a post-secondary certificate, industry licensure, or degree. Section C talks about aligning Minnesota's secondary and post-secondary education programs, talks about some of the things that needed to be done there. Section D talks about alignment to Minnesota's workforce needs, and Section E talks about the efficient and cost effectiveness. So I know the committee has lots before it, but that's kind of the bill. I think it's all things that we've talked about in this committee and others. And Madam Chair, I certainly would stand for questions.
Thank you so much, Senator.